This video is brought to you by Atlas VPN. Hello noble ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and you may have heard that we're getting a new samurai related TV series set in feudal Japan. It's going to be released on Disney Plus. The trailer is out, so let's check it out. Shogun. Wow, already the first 6 seconds and I'm really hyped up. So already for what I could see in the first 6 seconds, I see very nice costumes. That's the first thing that really struck my eye. And of course I saw a full-on samurai armor. This is going to be epic, I hope. So without further ado, let's continue.
Do not be fooled by our politeness. Our bows are made of rituals.
Okay, well, I already have a lot to say about this first part. It looks like this is set either at the very end of the Sengoku period or at the very beginning of the Edo period. My guess will be 1600. One thing that I'm noticing is the way these people are sitting. So let's say for a moment that this is in fact 1600 Japan. If you notice that what seem to be some high-end officials, probably quite a few members of the Bushi class, some of these might probably be samurai, they are sitting with their legs crossed on the floor. And this in Japan is called agura, also called agura o kaku. Whereas the lady who is speaking, who is in the middle, she is instead sitting, or begins to be sitting, in what appears to be what the Japanese call Cesa. Basically when they first kneel down and then they sit on their heels. If you haven't studied Japanese history and culture deeply, you might overlook this detail, but this already shows me that there is a lot of research behind this show. What I mean by that is whenever we think of the Japanese today, in fact this way of sitting that is called Cesa is the standard way, both in the majority of cases in formal situations, but also in a lot of other situations. In our day and age, there isn't a single Japanese who has never sat in Cesa. In fact, it's something that they tend to sit quite often. As I say, particularly in formal situations, but in general. It's the way the Japanese sit. Here, however, all of these officials and samurai are not sitting in Cesa, and that's great. The reason why I'm saying that is because even though we have proof that the way that the Japanese sit originates either in the Heian Jidai or maybe in the period called Kamakura, still at the time it was not as common. The majority of people would have been sitting with their legs crossed on the floor, including the samurai class, and the only 3 occasions in which people would be sitting in Cesa would be ceremony, prayer, and formal occasions. And the fact that just a few seconds after she uses the word
Rituals
is in fact perfect. It's very apt. One problem that we often see when we see samurai movies and even video games in our day and age is because we have this image of Japanese sitting in Cesa all the time, then we have all of the samurai class and bushi sitting in Cesa, and it's out of place, it becomes anachronistic. In this case, however, the fact that only the lady who is speaking about ceremony sits in Cesa but everyone else doesn't is in fact very authentic. Most likely the beginning of the introduction of Cesa within civil manner, it belongs to the Edo period, but it's the Meiji restoration, so the Meiji period and the newly elected government that starts pushing Cesa like maniacs as the correct way of sitting. And the term itself, if we look at the characters, the first one that we are pronouncing Se is in fact on its own pronounced Tadashi, and it means correct. And then the second one, which we are reading Za in this compound kanji pronunciation Cesa, on its own is read Suaru, and it means to sit. So correctly sitting or proper sitting. Very authentic. Let's continue. Okay, so that was a European. And we did see in the very beginning a massive ship during a storm. So it would be very interesting to see if they do introduce this whole discussion of Europeans arriving during this very complicated period in Japan. And I see that she's now talking to us Europeans, isn't she? She's explaining things. What kind of Europeans would these be? Well, considering the fact that the first Europeans to make contact, of course, the first mentions from a European about Japan comes from the book of Marco Polo, but on page 160 of said book, Marco Polo himself tells us that he had never been to Japan. He has only heard people in China speak about Japan. So the very first Europeans who actually do make contact with the Japanese are in fact the Portuguese in 1543, if I'm not wrong. If I'm wrong, I'll just put it on the screen. But in this case, because we are in the 1600, and this guy should be Dutch. We'll see if it is the case.
There's a saying out here, every man has three hearts.
And from the accent that this guy is having now, the way he pronounces the S, I think he is Dutch. Once again, a very interesting touch of authenticity. And look at those clothes. My gosh, this shot is beautiful with the moving doors as well. Susuma, very cool.
One in his mouth for the...
That is the, in fact, Tokugawa Clan symbol on the banners. I have one right here. There it is, Tokugawa Clan.
world to know. Another in his chest, just for his friends.
Okay, were the two kissing now two men? Were they two samurai, or was it a woman and a guy? Sometimes it's difficult to understand from the back because they all have long hair. Of course, the one on the right was a guy. Let me rewind a second. No, it's a woman. Okay, so I think it's this main girl, probably not the protagonist, but the main girl that we saw at the beginning. You know how sometimes I complain on my videos when it comes to historical authenticity when they push homosexual relationships where they're not supposed to be from a historical standpoint. For example, there was this video that I made, thumbnail here, where I reacted to another channel talking about how homosexual relationships were encouraged and normalized in the medieval period between knights, which is ridiculous. But with the samurai instead, it is something that we know existed. It happened between an older samurai and a younger samurai. That kind of relationship existed. Sometimes might have been purely physical, other times it might have been emotions and caring. And there is a movie, even though the Japanese usually don't speak about it very much, believe it or not, on their movie industry, but there was a movie released in 1999, if I remember right, which is called Gohatto. Now the word Gohatto in Japanese can be translated as taboo or like prohibited, but specifically when talking about, for example, the Edo period, it's a specific set of written rules created in the Edo period to discuss things that were prohibited. So they chose that word, and I watched this movie at university, was shown to us as, you know, Japanese being my major at university many years ago. And I remember that movie in fact showed this kind of sexual romantic attraction between male to male samurai within the class. Not that every samurai would be like that, but it was something that existed and is documented historically. So that's why for a moment when I saw these two kissing in the shade, I thought, well, if these are two samurai, in this case it would be a good situation to speak about these people and these situations that historically did happen because it's documented. So it wasn't the case, but if they do show it in the show, I think it would be good because it would be historically accurate and correct. We'll see. Now, if you're like me and you like to surf the internet looking for interesting historical information, it's a great idea to do it in safety, which is why you should totally use today's sponsor, Atlas VPN. A VPN is a virtual private network that makes all of your internet traffic travel through an encrypted tunnel, and this way it protects you from spying, public Wi-Fi dangers, it hides your IP address, and online activities. Atlas VPN is a great choice because it was developed by cyber security specialists, and among other things, it gives you access to the Data Breach Monitor, which is a security feature designed to track any data breaches related to your online account, automatically scanning any leaked information. But another add-on through Atlas VPN is the fact that you can use Netflix from any countries regardless of where you are. So let's say that you wanted to watch a show that is only available in the UK, but you live in America. No problem, just change your country through the VPN and boom, access granted. I always have Atlas VPN active on my machine, so that is because one account lets you use multiple devices. I personally really like Atlas VPN not only because it's a great choice, but also because it's really affordable, and that links to today's special offer. Get the Black Friday price cut. That's $1.70 a month for 3 years plus 6 months for free. If you've been considering getting a VPN but you weren't sure about the prices, then now is the time. And don't forget to click the link in the description. That's $1.70 a month for 3 years plus 6 months for free. Keep in mind that this is a time-limited offer, so be quick and click the link in the description. And big thanks to Atlas VPN for sponsoring my video.
And the secret heart buried deep.
My gosh, there is something I absolutely love is Japanese architecture, specifically of the Sengoku period and early Edo, with all those castles. So not the early castles that were kind of wooden fortresses that were mostly taking advantage of the natural defenses and look nothing like that, but these kind of castles. I myself have a series dedicated. I've got two videos where I actually go to Japan and visit, because of course I used to live in Japan, where I go to Japan specifically for filming, know my way around Japan pretty well. I lived there for about 4 years, and I went back, filmed a couple of videos, you'll find links in the description, and I took a lot of footage of Japanese feudal castles because they look absolutely stunning, and here they are showing that exactly how they are. Be interesting to see how they recreate the inside, however, because a lot of the inside of these castles now is empty. Occasionally they still have the matchlock type arquebuses on the walls, which look great, but that's about it.
Where no one can find it.
I see some reference to the theatrical, it's either kabuki or the Noh theater. I see the masks. Gosh, they're putting a lot of stuff in this trailer. Whoever came up with the trailer did a fantastic job at showing a lot of aspects. I hope that they show a little bit more of the war aspect, combat, maybe battles. That'd be great. Those, of course, are the kanji for writing Shogun, which is the highest by general in Japanese armies.
What kind of man wields power in a land like this? The one with the open, or the one you never see? Will I die here? Likely.
Will I die here? Likely. Well, yeah, it must have been tough for the early, particularly because the early Portuguese actually ended up in Japan. They didn't mean to go to Japan, but they ended up in Japan as they were experiencing going through a storm. So it was a shipwreck. That's the word I was looking for. So for them, it must, but that actually kind of started the whole maritime trade network that then the Portuguese will build. But when it comes to the Dutch, it was instead something a bit more like, yeah, we need to go to Japan once again because they wanted to establish trade networks, but for exploring and making contact, and for the spreading of the Christian religion, specifically with the Jesuits. I see that they are using a little old school form of Japanese as he finishes with ja. But I want to hear a bit more the Japanese, how it's spoken. So it appears that the only character who actually speaks English is the girl, so she's probably the translator, because I see that the only other character that we see speaking now who is Japanese is using actual Japanese. Be interesting if they keep that, because it would create a new layer of authenticity, of course. And good practice for me.
War is coming.
Those are Christian Jesuits right there. And there we go. So we see the first shot with samurai, and they look great. They look great. The armor is fantastic. Like this one probably is made by Iron Mountain Armory, maybe. The only thing that I'm noticing that I want to complain about is that the armor doesn't look... It looks a little dusty. So maybe that's the only thing I would complain about, because as all warriors throughout the entirety of history, every warrior, soldier or professional takes care of his equipment, just like modern day soldiers have to take care and continuously clean and keep their equipment in pristine conditions because their life depends on it. The same would have been for the Japanese. Here it looks a little too kind of used up. But then again, if I don't know what this scene is, maybe it's after a battle, maybe it's, I don't know. There could be a reason, so I'll leave it at that. But I see quite a few spears or yari in the background.
Life and death are the same. Both can have value and purpose.
Okay, so the armor looks fantastic, as I was saying. I really like it. I'm not sure about the conditions. I'll have to see more shots, but it does look fantastic. It would be good to see how the armor of the officers look. The weapons look very authentic for what I could see there. The style of combat, I only saw a very short exchange with naginata, I think they were. So the kind of spear with a blade at the end. It looks a little bit like a European glaive. It looked a little stylized. So one thing that it's important to keep in mind whenever we try to recreate battlefield combat is that it wouldn't look like modern day or even Yaido, for example, which is very ritualistic, very calm, very beautiful to look at. The art of war, of whether it be Heian period, Kamakura, Sengoku, does it really matter? It would have all been brutal, effective, and quick. Now, when form and function can join, they always do. So if it can look good and be effective at the same time, great. But we'll have to see if they make it look a bit too modern, if you will. Then it might not be a great representation. But we still don't know. I've only seen them literally cross Naginata for a second. We'll see how it looks.
This is not where we die. We should be corpses, I know. But here we are. My life is mine and yours is yours. If you can't see that.
Yeah, so now I was seeing her, the character. She's clearly trained in combat. It would be interesting to see because, yeah, some women were trained in combat, particularly women of noble birth, because they were supposed to be able to defend themselves and the territories when the men were in war. There were, of course, the occasional Onna Bugeisha, which were actual women warriors. Kind of rare, but they did exist. For example, Tomoe Gozen was one that is very famous. And then, of course, there were the famous kunoichi, so the kind of shinobi, no mono, or ninja. There were female secret agents, and they were also trained in combat. So it'd be interesting to see what she is and why she's trained. At one point, right now, she was like facing 8 or 9 spearmen, which of course will be suicide, but she was doing these like very round movements. I'd like to see how realistic it is in the combat, that's all I'm saying, but we'll see.
He'll never be free of this prison.
Everyone was sitting in Cesa there, so once again, if we see the full movie, I'll be able to kind of decide or judge if it's a bit overdone, the Cesa, or if they kept it into very ceremonial and prayer-related or very respectful situation, as it should be for the period. We'll see.
Death is in our air.
One more thing to say. I've got a lot to say, I think, about this trailer. So note how now she is very casually walking bare feet on just terrain, soil, in this case muddy, probably because of the, well, I suppose some rain, and also because basically she's on the beach. The Japanese people actually didn't mind walking bare feet on the ground. It was something that people did at the time, not only in the 1600s, but also before that. Getting some dirt under your soles, or the soles of your feet, and sometimes even on your clothes, wasn't considered a dirty look. It was considered as something normal. So the fact that she's casually walking barefoot in this scenario is not something that will be like, why is she doing that? No, it's actually good for the time. The only thing we are told is that even though the Japanese populace as a whole didn't have any problems sitting on the soil or the ground, we do know that the only occasion in which they wouldn't do that would be if the ground was muddy or very wet. And then if they needed to, I'm saying common people, if they needed to rest for a moment, they would squat, maybe for 10-15 seconds, they'll breathe a little bit, rest, and then they will begin walking again.
And sea and earth.
Of course, we have a little showing of the tea ceremony. We can't really see it from this shot. Hopefully we can with further shots, but I would be very interesting to see if she does sit in Cesa in this case, because if she does, that would be good, considering the fact that even though now the Cesa form of sitting is intricately connected to the tea ceremony, and that was indeed something that was added as a requirement early on, when the tea ceremony started, the correct way to sit was actually agura, so crisscross, like the legs crossed on the floor. But in this case, because we're in the 1600s, she should sit in Cesa. Let's continue, this is fun.
Just remember, we live and we die.
Interesting execution over there. So far, for what I can see, the samurai look fantastic. I think this was produced by FX, which is an American studio. But definitely they're having some exceptional, very famous Japanese actors already in the cast. I've already recognized quite a few. It seems that they did an excellent job when it comes to historical accuracy.
It is you who is imprisoned. Freedom is all you ever live for.
Yeah, she definitely, you don't want to mess with her, that's clear. She just stabbed a guy multiple times. And maybe she's some kind of secret agent, it's possible. Beautiful, beautiful war shots with the armor and all the soldiers. The photography in this film, TV series already looks fantastic. And I believe that's the end. Okay, Shogun, and then February 2024. I'm really looking forward to this. Already in the trailer, I've noticed so many things that makes it look like they had some historical advisors, both on the costume side of things and the architectural side of things, and maybe in the combat. Once again, when it comes to combat, it really depends on what style they choose and how they're going to recreate a form of combat which really is mostly gone. There are some styles in Japanese kenjutsu, not yaido, but specifically kenjutsu and yaijutsu, which do still keep at least some, not entirely, but some of the original forms of the Sengoku period and ways of combat, but still, for example, Katori Shintoryu, which I did practice for a little bit. It's not the only one, there are a few. It will be interesting to see how much study they put and what sort of choreographers they hired in order to recreate these combat scenes in the most authentic way possible. Also the way maybe soldiers fight other armored soldiers, because of course armor versus armor combat is very different from unarmored combat, between a duel between unarmored combat, a duel between two unarmored fighters, so that, or swordsmen. That would be fantastic. So far, very good. I'm getting some very good feelings when it comes to this. I'm really looking forward to review and watch the entire series. We will begin with episode 1, as we always do in these reviews, in February, as soon as this comes out. And of course, if they put out some other teasers or trailers, I'll absolutely review that. But what did you think? What impressions did you have of this trailer? Do you like it? Are you interested? Did you notice something that I didn't or missed entirely? Please let me know in the comments, and let me know if you are looking forward to this. Thank you as always for watching my video and my content. If you are new, please become a noble one. Subscribe to my channel for more content from the Metatron, and don't forget to check the link in the description below to check out the special offer that Atlas VPN has for you. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Goodbye.